Reimagining Success, episode 214. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This month for the Escaping the 9 to 5 series, I am here with Penny Terndrup, and I'll dive straight in, as I always do, and ask you, Penny, to introduce yourself better than I possibly could and tell us what were you doing before and what are you doing now?
Okay, so I'm Penny, and before, that's an interesting starting point. What before what? So I guess my big transition was from lawyer to person that liked working with people, and that's not that lawyers don't, but I think that was my Waterloo in terms of transition. And I was a solicitor in the city for probably about 5 or 6 years, and realised over a fairly long time that was not for me, and I stopped doing it. And now I was a search agent, a recruiter, headhunter, and now I've done a more gentle transition into coaching and leadership development.
You've already picked up on an interesting nuance and the point of before what, and I think that's what I've realised over my years of the transition, I suppose, that it's not just one moment, is it? It's several. And when I quit my job in 2013, I thought that was it. Ta-da! I've done my big brave thing and I'm going to live my best life. And it was just the very first step. But I suppose diving into that Waterloo moment, then you've made it sound very simple. How did you realise that it wasn't for you, and how did you then choose recruiting as a first step?
Okay. So I think it's just sort of crept over me over a period of. I moved once. I think that often happens. I think people feel it's situational rather than contextual, maybe. Or and so I trained and I stayed with the firm. I was pretty happy, if anyone's listening. But it became obvious that what I was doing wasn't making me feel happy. And so I went to a recruiter, had a lovely chat, and they sent me out to meet some people, and I took a job. And I was full of hope, and it was all going to be different. My life would be great. And again, you know, the people around me were nice and it was okay, but it just didn't make my heart sing. I didn't love being a solicitor. And I think I started to realise that there was something wrong with what I was doing rather than where I was doing it. And someone recommended that age-old Bible called What Colour is My Parachute? It's about that thick. Yeah, you know it. And standing on the tube, commuting, reading this thing and thinking, okay, there's this other dimension that I could start exploring. And so it sped up towards the end. And I remember being at work on a New Year's Eve in the evening, and I should have been in Suffolk with half a bottle of wine inside me, and I wasn't. And I thought, yeah, this is it. I think this is my moment. Went home, had Christmas, and had a break, and came back and said, no, I think I'm off.
And you mentioned happiness there and your heart singing. Was that something that you expected going into the career as a lawyer, or did you not even consider that as a young graduate starting a career?
Yeah, and it's a phrase that's tricky to use, isn't it? I mean, insert own phrase here, but no, it wasn't even on the agenda. It was the thing you did next. Okay, you do school, you do uni, you do get a job, and if you've taken a sort of a track that, yeah, there are tracks which lead you to the next place, and I'd reached the next place. And I just couldn't quite imagine carrying on there. It's all about what next for a really long time. And then you get there and it's, well, so what? And I think it's important. I wasn't absolutely miserable. it just wasn't, it felt like there was this other possible, there was more that was possible that I hadn't been aware of, because I was waiting for the next thing all the time.
Yeah.
That sort of existential crisis type.
Yeah, and yet again, there was no massive trigger, right? It was, I guess, a sort of an accumulation, as you said, and like me too, I didn't hate my job either. So it's harder to have the courage to break away from something that's kind of working.
Yeah.
And you know, being a lawyer is pretty much the epitome of success in our society still. Law, medicine, those are, you know, very admirable, impressive careers. So And so we've already danced around it a little bit, and you know my whole topic and the name of the podcast is Reimagining Success. So how has your definition of success, if you've ever thought about it that way, perhaps not, evolved over these different transitions?
I love the way you frame it. And I think there are two parts to what I'm going to say. I think it's what happened for me. And I think maybe what I'm seeing out there as well has changed again. I think COVID's had a massive effect. No surprise there, but I think for me, I became aware of this sort of other room where the door opened and there was this other room of, oh gosh, I could actually be happy as well, and I could there'd purpose, there'd be more meaning in it. And for a while, I think I'd gone through that process of moving jobs, and I'd understood that the recruiter I worked with, who was lovely, I kind of saw what she got out of it personally, and she saw this person happier, and that seemed like a really good thing. And so I thought, I'll do that then, and had a really great career. I really enjoyed my recruiting, and again, it's looking for the next thing in that. So you build a business and you get better at it, and then for me, the next thing was search, which seems like a very grown-up thing to do, and isn't really. But then, and I guess for me, I think life is transition. And you know the books and the theory of the fact that we're all going to have 5 careers before we die, and we're going to work longer. And I think now younger people coming through will just have a career of transition. So we'll start maybe to think about things in a different way to how perhaps we, older than you, but grew up thinking you have a career and then you maybe have a non-exec career at the end, but then you retire. It just doesn't feel like that anymore. And I guess for me, having done that big jump, which felt very scary, that sort of liminal space, which I can talk to in a minute, but that sort of scary bit, I survived. I jumped off the ledge, and everything was okay. And then so since that into search and recruitment, I found, through a bit of a circuitous route, which involved quite a lot of psychotherapy and some training there, found coaching. And so my transition into coaching was gradual, much more gradual. It was much more about feeling possibilities and exploring and learning. I think the other thing that kicks in perhaps as you become aware of these possibilities is gaining not necessarily knowledge, but maybe self-knowledge. And growing. I think I might start on the cliches. So that transition into coaching, and I now coach full-time and love it, and I don't know what's next. I'm doing a lot more work with teams, and that stretches me, and it's less scary, the fact that having survived and knowing that perhaps my career is a series of undulating transitions. It's okay, but yeah, what's coming up on the inside for everyone, for those coming into the world, I don't know. It's different.
Well, yeah, it's so different, isn't it? Because I always thought that too, that if your definition of success, as you say, is certainly my parents' generation and even us, to be honest, that's what I expected. as a child, I suppose we think we want to be a fireman or a nurse or a veterinarian and an astronaut. That's it. You've got the very black and white pockets. And of course, what is the statistic? 20% of jobs that exist today won't, 80% probably, I don't know what the numbers are. And, you know, most jobs don't exist, yes, and so on. So you can't possibly plan for that. But I imagine as well that because once you've made that transition once, as you say, you get more comfortable. Well, I've taken that leap once, I can take the leap again. I think that's quite empowering. But you did mention that it was quite scary. So, you know, how did you overcome those fears, I guess, in particular in the first leap?
Yeah, and I think the first one was a leap. And the old parachute book does talk about, you know, jumping off and there'll be a ledge and you can, but there's a jump. I think since then it hasn't been a leap at all. It's been absolutely a process and a sort of, and how did I do it? I think I was lucky that I was supported. People around me that kind of, and I think the pressure built to a point where you're just not happy or it's not okay and there's something knocking at you, and it's easier to do something scary than to not do something. And with the second part, the sort of undulating transition, I think as you enter different stages of life, and I haven't explicitly answered your question around what success looks like, and that changes. And yeah, my mum was really happy when I was a lawyer, and then it was not. And then as life continues, and I had kids, and success for me is much more holistic around being able to live my life well, have my kids be okay, and give back to my community, and I don't know, the stuff that makes you a whole person, perhaps. That's increasingly, I think, my definition for me. It's not right for everyone. Yeah. Where did we get to?
Well, I also lost my track a little bit because you said so many things that I want to jump on, so it's always hard to both listen and be present. And also, so I've lost that, so I stayed present with you. And now so we talked about the scary leap and that initial leap, but as you say, after a while, it's a bit of experimenting and it's adjusting the sails, I suppose, as you continue navigating. And you mentioned obviously becoming a mother. That's another shift. And one thing I guess that came up a bit earlier when you talked again about, you know, the lawyer and your mother is proud and so on, that identity, has that been something, one of the metaphors that I'm sure you've come across, it was not life-changing, but at least eye-opening for me when I came across it many years ago, this butterfly, the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon, and you think it just has a little sleep and then it emerges as a butterfly, but the apparent biological reality, which I hope is true, but it's an interesting myth, at least if it's not true, it breaks down into a really gooey, painful process of protein soup and then starts the slow process of piecing itself back together into a butterfly, which I think is you know, not a totally inaccurate way of thinking about it for some of us who have a particular identity, who have built a whole identity on a particular career, perhaps especially things like lawyer and so on, and we have that respect. And even if we don't think that the prestige and the status and so on is that important, there is still, even for me, I came out of a big company and suddenly I was nothing, nobody, and it can be quite painful. It takes time to, you know, find your feet and develop a new identity. So has that idea of identity come up for you? Is that something?
No, it really rings lots of bells. And so yeah, I can't get past the pupa thing, and that takes me to another interest of passion, I don't know, belief, whatever. So I did a lot of study around psychosynthesis, which is a psychology, which is transpersonal psychology, and has a really helpful model, which I use all the time in my coaching, which is subpersonalities. And the model would say that we all have different parts of ourselves. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. And we probably live through particular identities a lot of the time. And I think in transition or in career planning or identity, I think we often have a sort of a desired identity. So we might be chasing something, or that would be success. And then we perhaps have this sort of the knocking part, the part that's wanting to become the butterfly. And we don't know what that is. We don't know what it looks like yet. So this soupy bit, I think, it can be scary because we love control, don't we, as adults, and we're taught to know what we're doing and to do. And actually to think about it the other way around and think, well, maybe the right thing to do right now is to not do, and is to accept that this is this period of experimentation, perhaps, and that not doing something isn't bad. And it is that liminal place, that gap between. And I love that. We're rebuilding that identity, and trying things on, and with all the practicalities that paying the bills perhaps might mean for a lot of people. I think the research, the theory is, the more you can experiment in working on a new identity, work identity, the more likely that is to be successful. So that experimentation period, I maybe like to call it.
I like exploration for me is so key. The not doing is the hardest thing, I think, and I keep experiencing that now. Just feel, just don't do, and I've got to do something. It's quite a strong drive in me. But the learning and growing that you talk about, that's a huge value for me. I don't think it's cliche at all. It's even what I built my, I think, coaching framework on back in the day, because it was growth outside of the comfort zone, and it seems so obvious to us now, perhaps, but I think it's so easy to allow that comfort zone to shrink around us. And even now I feel it happening again, in a different stage of my life. And I think the fear is huge. And one colleague once told me, Anna, like 99% of people are never going to quit their job. And I found that quite interesting. And the reason why I'm now, partly because I've been out of that world for 10 years now too, and I'm much more interested in the ongoing process of sustaining the escape, as it were, not just that initial moment, these undulations that you talked about, and the bigger concept of redefining success. But it is scary, and it's an interesting reflection for me to understand, because so many people in my community will never do it, or will take 4 or 5 years to even book a call, and then they'll decide not to do it. And my role is not to persuade anyone, so I'm only there for the people who are ready. But so many people are not ready. But that tipping point that you mentioned is definitely something I've heard before, when it gets less comfortable to stay where you are, and actually easier almost to do the scary thing. I think that's quite a good depiction of that moment when you have to take action, because it's easier to do so than not to.
And maybe that happens because of I don't want to call it denial or not doing anything, but I think having gone through that tipping point moment in the past, I'm more open to seeing it as a process. And that process being, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We're very good at binary, aren't we?
Yes.
I mean, we are so good at that as a species. And I guess that sort of just reading something, what would I like to be doing? What's wrong with this picture? What trying things on, and in a work context. It's hard if you've got to spend all your time doing something you're not particularly fulfilled by, but maybe there might be another way to experiment. We talk about sort of interest groups, for example. So who do you surround yourself with? And I guess it's just taking that information and that osmosis of what might come into your pupa, into your identity over time, that maybe might take the pressure off that moment for scary stuff.
Yeah, and I definitely did that. I did writing courses and coaching things and conferences, and it took a long time for that to become anything concrete. I didn't sit at my desk thinking, okay, what's the exact business going to, exactly, although albeit that's great work to do, but it's not necessarily going to look like that in practice. But I guess more tangibly, you said you are working full-time in your coaching business, so what does that look like? You mentioned you're working, did you say, with groups, individuals? What did that look like for you today?
Okay. And so this is now, and who knows next week.
Yes. Okay.
So I just love working with people. And that tends to be one-on-one, tends to be within organizations, and you have a sort of sense of the system of the organization and how that fits in, and how so the system as a whole fascinates me, and working organizationally and with individuals is not mutually exclusive. And then the extension of working with individuals in an organization is to work with teams. And I'm doing less of that than I'd like to, because I think that's something that is growing. I think that the next iteration of coaching will be the next layer of the onion, perhaps. It's not it, and that's becoming busier and more the norm. But I'm hopeful, because I guess I know a lot of coaches, and so I know you do, and I work with a training organisation that trains coaches, and I think the vast, huge majority of people that I know that come into this field just want to make things better. It's and to do that, we're not an island. So yeah, I'm aware of who might be watching us talking and trying to be relevant there, but I guess to not see yourself as alone. Even
what do you mean in terms of collaborating with other coaches, in terms of, as you said, going into organizations and teams? What do you mean more concretely?
Okay, yeah, I'll try and make more sense. I think so. An individual who is feeling that they're not in the right place, they're not doing their life's work right now. It's very easy to feel isolated and alone. And I'd encourage them to find other people to talk to. It's not a coach. Find yourself places to belong that aren't isolating.
Yeah. I do love that. I went to, I think, my very first event, and I'm not sure, it's so hard to remember the order of things now, the chronology, but I went to an evening event with a coach, funnily enough. No idea who the coach was, what they said, but the power of the session was, it was the first time I was in a room with 10, 15 other people who were in successful corporate jobs and weren't happy and were afraid of leaving, but they wanted to. And that was just, I'm not alone, as you said. So that really resonates for me. And I guess there's all this talk now of quiet quitting and disengaging and working from home because of pandemic, although it's a great thing, it leads to potentially isolation and so on. So I think that's a really important point to, you don't have to work with a coach right away, but to seek out groups where share an interest, or you might meet people who are in a similar situation and you can see perhaps those possibilities that you talked about early on, which is so important.
Which I've moved away completely from team coaching, but COVID has had a massive effect on a network, on an individual network, both at work and organisationally. I think within an organisation, the connection points are atrophied. No surprise there. Then home will do that. However great it is, however the benefits are, it means that the connection that people feel with both the organisation and their co-workers and is going to be less. But I think individually, I think there's some research from, I think it was Microsoft research, some wonderful stat, 15-20% of of individual networks have shrunk over the period of the pandemic and aren't being replaced in the same way. So in terms of identity, I think that that's sort of the potential for feeling more isolated is there, and also for doing something about it. So the network to support you in changing it is now shrinking. So just having who you surround yourself with, be it at work or outside.
And ironically, I've been working with individuals pretty much the whole time. I do some corporate workshops, but I'm feeling a need to address the issue from the other side, because these individuals who want more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment, there's the other side of the story. They don't necessarily want to quit their jobs. They want to find a place. And as you said, it's the team, quite practical things of policies and mindsets around someone not being in the office and meeting times and so on, emails and everything, expectations. And then there's the broader organization in terms of policies and culture and senior leadership. So it all begins to kind of, the pieces of the puzzle do fit together, both from my perspective as then an expert coming in, hopefully, but also, as you say, for the individual in that structure. Yeah. There's so many things you can do yourself in terms of boundaries and work on your values and everything. But if you're in a place that isn't then conducive to that, or if you're not getting the support or making those connections, that can be really tricky.
And organisations are often quite good at throwing a coach at someone, but not looking at how everything fits together, or not necessarily getting elephants out into the room.
Yes, yeah.
Or having real conversations that can be quite challenging. So, yeah.
Throwing a coach or a wellbeing initiative or something like that, sort of a tick the box exercise. Yeah, absolutely. But hopefully, again, the pandemic and things have led us to sort of force certainly some organisations to confront these things. And I think senior leaders are getting involved with HR and so on. So things are happening. And I suppose in terms of visibility, we talk about a little bit, and identity, again, more of an external identity. How have you made that transition in terms of putting yourself out there, not as a lawyer, recruiter, but hey, this is me, I'm a coach and I can help you do these things? Do you do marketing? Is it word of mouth?
It's word of mouth. I bow to your wonderfulness in, I think you have a great personal brand and do really great stuff. I would say that everything I do is relationship based, and that's it's frustrating when I see great stuff happening around me. That would be the next thing I'd learn, actually. So if there's a stretch point,
in terms of more active marketing, you mean creating content?
I guess, so my self identity would probably be, I've still got a bit of lawyer knocking around here, which is you shouldn't really be shouting about yourself too much, because that's not really done. So and that's very much I don't think that's true, by the way. I think that's but I think for me there's quite a lot of that still. But that's okay, because the way I've worked and the way it will work for other people, perhaps, is just do a good job. And life has a way of looking after you, I think. Gosh, that sounds very out there, but yeah, word of mouth. Talk to people. Be interested.
Yeah. But that's huge in every aspect, but be interested, and it's about relationships, and that's so valuable. And word of mouth is amazing, and the fact that you're doing a great job and people are recommending you is I should bow down in awe to you. So the fact that you can have a full business based on that is incredible. What I would challenge, and it's something I have myself too, this idea of we can't shout out about ourselves, and I hope I don't come across that way.
No, you don't.
My clients want to be an expert. We want to be well known, respected. Thought leaders, we want to be leading in the industry in that way, and yet we've been taught we mustn't say that we're great, and unfortunately I think particularly women and in the north of Europe. And so, so my Swedish, everyone's equal, but also English, you certainly can't show off, and all these things is quite challenging in the online space. And I both admire and resent people who are better than me at that as well. So it's, it's a lack of comfort, but also, as you say, it's interesting to come to terms with that. And I think you have so much value. It's also about relationships at the end of the day. And it's about sharing what you think and making a contribution, putting that out there. I'm pushing my boundaries a little bit by voicing some more personal things on LinkedIn, for example, and it's hugely uncomfortable. And I'm getting, very positive response. But also, of course, if you stick your neck out a little bit, you're going to get more negativity as well. And it's sort of hardening your skin a little bit to that. I think that when you become more visible, by definition, more people will sort of assess what you're doing, I suppose. So it challenges you, but then that's exciting too.
Definitely.
In a scary and terrifying way.
Grow, isn't it? It's scary.
Yes.
Also
yes, because I can sit here in my comfort zone behind my computer doing my videos and things and stay in my little vanilla place, or I can begin to peek out and try to make those connections and say something perhaps a bit more worthwhile. And it's a process, and everything I say won't be clever or relevant or whatever, but hopefully it's a contribution, and each little piece will add up to something more.
But it's just like, as we started with, we talked about before when at what point. So I'd say, when does the relationship start? Because I think you build relationship from your screen immediately. I think that relationship building is something that wasn't possible perhaps when my work self was formed. Now I know about this in me, and that's okay. But it's thank you. This is really interesting.
This is something we can take that offline, as they say, but it's an interesting one, because so many people say, I don't like marketing. You're so lucky it comes naturally to you. And yes, I did come from a marketing background, but marketing yourself is a very different thing to marketing this beautiful perfume product over here, with celebrity models and so on. It's it's been quite a journey as well. So, and of course, selling is a different thing entirely too. But as you say, the relationships, my favorite thing is if someone comes on the phone with me and already knows they want to work with me because they've gone to my workshops, they've listened to the podcast, they get what I'm about. And then it's just about having a bit of conversation, making sure I can help them what's the right format or whatever. And that's an easy one. I can't do the hard sell and, the kind of cold to whatever it is. And, that kind of thing doesn't work for me. So it is relationships. And I think that's what coaching is. In a way, that's what marketing and selling is too.
Yeah, it's a reframe. You've just reframed it in a way that makes it a different thing. And just as we talked about, the ledge and the undulation, just exploring what it really means. So that's maybe my learning edge. But I think that over years, so I've been self-employed for 20 years, and I don't know. I think that the minute you think so that vulnerability, that sort of ability to question yourself and do that around people. For me, I think that's possibly my work. That's my work identity. That's what people who know me and work with me realize. And I suspect I've started to go down a wormhole here. I might need you to dig me out. But
well, I was just feeling again that undulation. That's my favourite word of the episode, because I think I love learning, and it's so easy in terms of business coaching and that kind of area in particular, and even coaching in general. I don't know how involved you are with seeing what other people are doing in the online space, but there's so much. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And, there's this business model and that course and webinar and so on. And there's a lot of valuable information out there for free, paid, individual group, etc. And there's that phase of learning and being open and listening. But there also has to be a season for actually, I've listened to what everyone else has to say.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to trust myself, and this is what I'm going to do. In my case, I'm going to launch this program or write this book. And then I come up for air again and look around, question, learn, and then I go back, because otherwise it's that imposter syndrome. It's constantly, oh my goodness, Penny's doing this amazing thing and I could never do that. And there's no point in me even trying to write a book because there are so many books out, then you just get stuck in a wormhole too. So I think there's an element of learn and then come back and focus and then open up again and question and then come back again.
There was, so we're talking in October 2022, there's a recent Guardian article that talks about imposter syndrome, and actually it was sort of an extension. It was talking a lot about mental health and health rather than illness, and we've all got imposter syndrome. I think the minority that don't believe they do maybe have different issues, but everyone questions themselves and worries about doing the right thing or being the right thing, and it's getting comfortable with that.
And in a way, the fact that you have it, I think, is a good thing, because it means you'll never get complacent, and it means, that you're asking the right questions, as long as it doesn't become debilitating and stop you from making contribution. And just again, coming back to the reframe for you, because I can't help but want to push you out there into the world. If you want to help people, which you do, and as we do as coaches, the way we do that is by reaching more people. And it's not to say that you have to grow your business and you don't have to have a YouTube following of 100,000 people, and I certainly don't. But, if you love what you do and if you want to help more people, then actually having a bit more of a public platform is the way to do that. So again, it's not about, check me out, I'm amazing. It's just, this is how I can help you, and allowing you to speak to more people. When it comes to, I guess, the practicalities, just to sort of finish up, I suppose I love this topic of what I call work-life integration, of how you make this work for you. I know you're at a different life stage with slightly older children than I do, so I imagine it looks a bit different to you. But, are you working full-time? Have you designed, this is exactly what I want to do, and you're very strict with that? Or are you very flexible? What does your kind of routine look like, I suppose?
Routine, that's a good word.
If you have a routine.
No. So for those of Myers-Briggs trained around, I'm an absolute big picture, don't really do structure, bit of a pressure prompted kind of person, and that means that the chaos that is my life is very comfortable for me. So I kind of work is me. So I'm doing something I love, and I think the thing that comes back all the time is if you have a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And it does feel like that. So I get up, I get the kids, they're teenagers, so they don't get up, and get them out of the house to whatever needs to be done, and then I do the work that I need to do, and I have the meetings that I need to have, and I get the shopping I need to get, and it's all one life, and that doesn't work for everybody. But I won't share my age. I leave everyone to guess. But it feels like I've built to here, and it works. It's a careful juggling of plate spinning constantly. But I guess that's being self-employed or being the master of one's own destiny isn't for everybody. But if this is the way somebody's thinking, you get to design your day. Not everyone has to know about it either. And if you can love what you're doing all the time, that's a real gift. You feel really lucky.
My goodness, I love that. And you're right, it's maybe not for everybody. And I imagine that the slightly younger you coming out of university, working as a lawyer, probably wasn't so flexible in going with your energy, because I picture at least law being very, very rigid in terms of hours and so on. I think the danger of the I love my work so I can work any time, anywhere, is that it blurs a little bit too much, and especially maybe for some of us, and maybe it depends on the life stage. I know my partner, we were first on holiday together 5-6 years ago, got really angry with me for lying there on the sunbed by the pool with my notebook, because for me that was like envisioning and brainstorming, and that's magic for me. And of course, with the work we do, the questions I'm asking you today, I'm fascinated by personally, and I could talk to someone about that at a dinner party, at at the playground, or for work, and I love it. And it's just these are the questions. So I'm very lucky as well to have designed a business, to found a business that is what I love. But the danger, of course, is yes, if you then allow yourself to, and when I first started, I was working in bed, working in the kitchen and so on, whereas now, partly through my partner's work and then having the children, there are certain days I can work, and then it's a bit more regimented. I also find that structure for me gives me the freedom that I want, ironically, because when I let myself go too free, then I end up not writing the book, or not achieving the goals I want to achieve, because I've gone a bit too free with my time and just kind of let the day run away with me.
No, that's So what I hear when I say that when I say the word structure probably isn't what I absolutely have structure. It just doesn't. Yeah, if I don't want to work,
yes,
I don't work. But there are projects that I want to finish, or there are clients that need time. So I think perhaps it's control. There's another word to get towards the conversation with, but control and purpose. So I do things that matter. And sometimes they matter less. I think I'm playing with words here, but
I think it's the best time management hack there is, to do the things that matter. It's that simple. I'm a little going down that rabbit hole now in terms of books. And there's one called 168 hours, which is the number of hours you have in the week. There's another called 4,000 weeks, which is the average number of weeks we have in our life. And all these books that are questioning because we tend to want to just do more, work smarter, not harder, and push things into, less time. And actually, I think it's a lot bigger than that. It's shifting our mindset of what matters. It's sometimes choosing to drop a ball on purpose. And, if I've got a migraine, or if the kids are ill or whatever, then I choose to be present with that, because there's no point in, whenever I have fought it and tried to do something, I make mistakes, the kids are unhappy, or I get worse, or whatever it is. So it comes with maybe wisdom with age as part of it, and then experience and having the confidence to be able to do what you feel is right and not what you feel you should be doing, I suppose.
Yeah, and we're back to the identity. Yeah, you're clear about who you are in that context, perhaps.
Penny, there are so many other threads we could continue with. I'm conscious of your time and everybody's, but I'd love to do a series of this. We can come back next week with our next instalment, but so many things we hopefully can continue offline, as it were. But where can we find you? I hope we can find you somewhere in the online space, even if you're not as...
I am there. I'm out there. So Anna will show you where I am. But my website is pennyterndrup.com. And what else shall I give you? Yeah, you find me there.
Well,
and I'm on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you, Penny, so much for time. So many insights and so many places my mind could have gone. So I really appreciate that. I think there was something in it for many listeners, whether they are, as we said, considering at that early stage of the fear, and am I at that pivotal moment, or, as you say, more in this undulating phase, which I love. My favourite phrase now, I'm going to keep stealing that, I'm afraid, that continues in those 5 careers, maybe even. So that's an exciting time to think what's next. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Penny. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Are you at that point where you're asking yourself, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? And the answer is a resounding no, but you're not yet sure what you want to do instead. I get it. I was in your shoes back in 2013 when I took a good hard look at myself and my CV. And up until then, I'd followed the conventional path. Good school, good university, good job. I was also single while more and more friends around me were settling down with partners and babies. Now, fast forward to today, and I've built a coaching and consulting business. I've published 2 books with more on the way. I've launched a podcast. But more than that, I've been able to travel the world. I've made more time for friends and family. And I've designed and shaped a location-dependent business and a lifestyle that's 100% tailored to my own personal definition of success. Oh, and I've also moved countries, I've fallen in love, and I've had 2 beautiful little children. So if you want to redefine what success looks like for you, then get in touch to book a call, onestepoutside.com/call, onestepoutside.com/call, and I'd like to help you do just that.